What's up, gamers, and welcome to the official short pause review for Sniper Elite V2 Remastered. That is quite the mouthful. I'm Ben. Joining me for this is, of course, Brent Felsing, our resident Sniper Elite V2 Remastered reviewer. Just at the beginning here, let's just get your impressions on just the overall game, kind of the gameplay, how that played out, the campaign that you went through. Like, what's your kind of like brass tacks take on Sniper Elite V2?
Well, when I first played Sniper Elite V2 last gen, the standout thing was at the time was the X-ray kill cam. That was like the big selling point of Sniper Elite V2 was the X-ray kill cam. You got to see that slow motion of a bullet just ripping through arteries and shattering bones and yes, destroying testicles. I mean, it was just that was like the big portion of that game. That was the big catch of the game that was really trying to grab people. And at the time when you played it, it was a more linear experience. You know, you went from point A to point B, take out enemies, complete your objective, and move on to the next area. That was back in the day. That's when Sniper Elite V2 first came out. And at the time, I was really excited about it because I did like the stealth elements of it. I did like the sniping mechanics. That all felt really, really good in that game. It did have its flaws. It did have some issues, and some of them are even more apparent now after we've played Sniper Elite 3 and 4, and because this is an older game and games have obviously evolved quite a bit. So, I mean, it does have its faults, and I didn't expect them to like get rid of all of them. I mean, a lot of them has to do with like mission structure and the way the missions carry out and how the game plays in terms of like other weapons outside of snipers. But for the most part, I mean, this is just this is where it all started, man. This is what made Sniper Elite what it is today. This is the basically the groundwork for what what people are looking to expect from these types of games.
Gotcha. So just in terms of just pure gameplay, and not even necessarily comparing it to what we get in 3 and 4 in the modern generation, but just from, if you were somebody who just picked up Sniper Elite V2 Remastered, was like, yeah, I want to see what this franchise is all about. I figure I'll start here. This is the oldest one that's available on my current generation system. What's your take on the gameplay that's in this game?
Well, the sniping mechanics are still very, very strong. It still is really, really good to play as a sniper in Sniper Elite V2. A lot of the it goes to show that they haven't messed too much with the sniping mechanics over the years because they are very, very good. But, in terms of like, even if you have never played Sniper Elite 3 or 4, but you've been playing a lot of games this gen, this game's still going to feel dated in terms of its gameplay in some ways, especially when you have to use your submachine gun, because that's the only other weapons you can have are submachine guns and pistols. And a lot of these, in this type of game, especially Sniper Elite, and we even noticed it kind of in 3 and 4, using your SMG isn't the ideal way to play this game. This is a sniping game. And playing through Sniper Elite V2, I kind of, it reminded me of just some of the game's flaws outside of sniping. It's not a game you want to play run and gun. It's not a game you want to get into, combat with your SMG unless it's, the last resort. So, I mean, in terms of its gameplay, it's a little rough still. The animations aren't where they should be this gen. I mean, this game still feels old. But, they obviously cleaned up the visuals, and the game runs at 60 frames. So, I mean, there's enough there to be like, ooh, this is so much better than what I played back in the day. But the core mechanics, this is still a sniping game. But, everything else is still kind of like behind where we're at now with gaming.
Mm-hmm. So, essentially for this, they've taken the old game and just gussied it up pretty much, right? They improved the resolution, improved the performance at it. But outside of that, they haven't revisited anything with this title, right? It's just simply, it's the game that we know and love as Sniper Elite V2, just visually enhanced for this generation, pretty much.
Yeah, if they improved anything in terms of like the gameplay mechanics, it's minimal at best.
Yeah, and as far as you remember, though, this is pretty much what the game was then, just more playable on our current devices. So one of the interesting things in all this, though, is the performance of the game. And, I've had the chance to play the game a little bit as well. And the game runs on the PlayStation 4 Pro and assumedly the Xbox One X as well. You have the opportunity to choose between performance and resolution modes. Now, do they have that available on the base consoles? Do you know?
No.
I imagine they don't. So... Nope. Base consoles, I assume, are locked to that 30 frame per second mode. But on the Pro and on the Xbox One X, you have the option to picked this performance mode, which from what I've played, it runs at a rock solid 60 frames per second. And it's a little jarring because I've personally never experienced a Sniper Elite game that just ran perfectly fine at 60 frames per second. You know, we played through Sniper Elite 4, and that game had an unlocked frame rate that was all over the place. It was still fun, and it still looked good you know, throughout much of the game. But, you know, the frame rate could be jarring in that game. But to see this one run at a rock solid 60, and obviously it's an older game from last gen, and it would, you know, make sense that it would run the way that it does. But it's you know, kudos to the developers and the team that was involved in remastering this game, because it really does perform well.
Oh yeah, it runs. I mean, that's the only way I want to play the game is in performance mode, because it runs very, very smooth. And obviously, I think frame rate is more appealing on the eyes when you see things running smoothly. You know, when we switched over to the resolution mode, you get like a sharper image. I mean, it looks good, but at the end of the day, this is still an older game. There's only so much they can do visually. I mean, the HDR pops, so that looks really nice.
Yeah.
But you know, the performance mode brings it down to 30 frames. And I mean, when you see a game, any game running at 30 frames compared to 60, you're always going to be like, man, that 60 looks really more natural. It looks smooth. And for a lot of shooters, especially when you're lining up precision shots, that smooth 60 frames is actually really appealing in a sniping game.
But Brent, why don't you walk us through? So the main attraction for most people, I assume, is going to be the campaign. Like, they're going to buy this game to kind of go through the campaign. So walk me through the campaign. Like, what are the missions like? Obviously, Sniper Elite's not renowned for its story or its characters. We joke about the cardboard action hero that Carl Fairburn is all the time, and that's still the case here. He has not evolved since Sniper Elite V2, so he's the same Carl that we know and love. But walk me through the campaign, mission structure, and I think this is a good spot too to bring in what fans of the series might see in Sniper Elite 3 or 4 that differs from V2 in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's played V2 and then has gone on to play 3 and 4 knows how this series has evolved. It's become more of an open, I wouldn't say it's open world, but it's an open area. Gives you different ways to take down objectives, take down your enemies and whatnot. There's a lot more emphasis on environmental damage, environmental kills that you can take people down. You know, when you come back to a Sniper Elite V2, it is much more of a linear experience. The missions are pretty much all the same. Some of the missions later on, especially one that involves you waiting for a rocket to refuel, kind of brings in kind of like a horde mode. I wouldn't say it's like a horde mode, but you're defending an area and you got an onslaught of enemies coming at you from a distance, so you're able to snipe. But you do have to plant your tripwires and landmines a lot more to kind of brace yourself for that ongoing onslaught. But for the most part, it is just a point A to point B. Take out a group of enemies here, move to the next section until you complete your objective. The missions are all pretty much in the same area. I mean, obviously, they all look different times time of day. But this isn't like Sniper Elite 4 where we had like a bunch of different areas that we were going to, different weather effects and whatnot. But you know, it's very much a linear experience. But the shooting mechanics all feel good. Like I said, it's really fun to snipe. It's especially there's a couple of missions where you have like an elite Russian sniper squad hunting you down. You're stuck in the middle of this plaza and they're all around you, so you gotta take cover, because I played on Sniper Elite, the hardest difficulty, and you can only take 1 or 2 shots before you're dead. And being able to, and having to maneuver my way around through limited cover to kind of spot out these snipers and find them and take them down, it was a very challenging experience. Playing on Sniper Elite is very, very challenging. It's a good challenge. It can almost be a little overwhelming, especially with some of I guess my biggest gripe with the mission structure is there are some moments where you're moving to your next objective where you hit like this invisible barrier that kind of triggers the next set of enemies to come out after you, and it kind of forces you to go from the stealthy approach you might be trying to carry out. You could have been going through the whole mission using the environmental sounds, thunder or rockets or bombs going off to mask your shots. So you're playing stealthy, and then you hit this like invisible barrier, and all these dudes just come running out of a door or an opening somewhere, and they open fire, and you're kind of forced to kind of either retreat as quickly as possible to get back so you don't die immediately, or you're forced to use your SMG, which again isn't ideal in this game. So some of that, the mission structure, the issues that we don't see in 3 and 4, like I said, that's kind of one of the weaknesses from this game. But it was, like I said, this is from years ago.
Yeah, so clearly they probably learned from
Yes.
from their mistakes in the past and tried to build on that with Sniper Elite 3 and 4. And that was one of the really neat things about Sniper Elite 4 is each level was this gigantic sandbox, just this open level. You know, not open world, but open level. It's just this one giant level, and there's a bunch of different objectives, and you can tackle them any way, shape, or form that you want to. So that's one of the really cool advancements that they've made to this franchise over the years. So campaign-wise, still pretty fun, though, when all's said and done.
Yeah, there's enough challenge in there, and again, this all goes on based on the sniping mechanics. They're just that good. It's one of the best sniping games in terms of like sniping mechanics out there. It's just so rewarding, especially when you're playing on Sniper Elite and you have to take gravity and the bullet drop and the wind into consideration. And when you can line up that one perfect shot without any of the aim assists, obviously when you play on Marksman or on Cadet, you're going to get a lot more aim assists, less concern about gravity and bullet drop and all that stuff. But when you can line up that one perfect shot on Sniper Elite from a great distance, it is incredibly rewarding because you're taking into account so many different variables.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And essentially, there's almost like two different versions of this game that you can play. You know, when you play on Marksman, like you said, it can be challenging. It's still fun, and there's, you know, the aim assistance and the red dot that helps you line up your sights. That's not present on Sniper Elite difficulty, which is almost like a whole different game. Like when you play that, I mean, you're taking a lot more realism into effect, and it's almost two separate experiences. So if you're a novice to the franchise, you go in there and you try out Marksman, you're like, this is cool, I had a lot of fun. And if you really want to take it to the next level, then you put it on Sniper Elite and see what that's like, because you've really got to use your sniping chops in that one. So definitely keep that in mind if you are checking this game out. The other thing, Brent, what else can you do in single player in this game? What else is available to you?
You can play it cooperatively, so you can bring in a friend, play through it cooperatively on any of those difficulties, and that's pretty much it. There's a lot of collectibles. There's gold bars you can collect. There's those wine bottles or whatever that you can shoot down. So there's a lot to do in terms of collectibles. That'll actually, there's a lot of them, so that'll actually draw out your playtime. But it took me about, I think, 6 or 7 hours just to get through the campaign itself. But thankfully, there are other modes and other things that we'll talk about here in a moment that kind of make it worth the trip.
Yeah. So let's get into some of those other modes now. So let's start first with let's talk about Overwatch, which is of course the big draw of the co-op modes. If you're playing this game co-op, like this is what you think of when you think of Sniper Elite co-op. So in Overwatch, one person is the sniper, one person is on the ground running mission objectives, and they're equipped with the aforementioned SMG and trying to kind of sneak their way across the terrain while the sniper is taking out enemies in the perch up top. And it's a really cool mode. We played a lot of it in Sniper Elite 3 and Sniper Elite 4, and we've seen them kind of iterate on that with those games and these big giant sandboxes that Rebellion has created in these future installments. What's your take on Overwatch as it is in V2 here, though?
Yeah, it's basically like what we've been talking about. We basically start with V2 with a smaller experience, and that's what we have on Overwatch. And these maps are not very, very big. They're actually pretty confined because the sniper only has so many areas that he can move to cover you from a distance. So it's more of a confined experience, no less intense. It's actually pretty intense in a confined space because there's a lot of enemies that we were encountering when we played through our Overwatch missions. But yeah, it's just essentially like you said, you're up on a perch covering, I'm on the ground trying to complete objectives. I can mark enemies for you, and then there's typically a lot of like environmental sounds to use to mask your shot. I can take down people stealthily if I want to. So there's a lot of cool ways to play Overwatch, but Overwatch is just like the campaign is fun to play cooperatively, but Overwatch is where that synergy is really important, where you're really working together. Each person has a role to play. In co-op in the campaign, you're basically just Carl Fairburn, just running through, sniping people and stuff. But Overwatch is where the relationship between the sniper and the marker, or the person on the ground, is integral. Yeah.
Some of the other modes that are available in there, they have like what do they call that one? The tank repair one. What's that called?
Oh, that was Bombing Run.
Bombing Run.
Yep, which was a lot tougher than we were anticipating. Because, and again, this falls back on the fact that yes, we could have planted a lot more trip mines and land mines and whatnot to kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of deter them from overrunning us. But the fact is, there's a lot of in that mode. You are forced to use your SMG in certain situations, and again, that's just not the game's strong suit.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, like this game's fun to play cooperatively for sure. Overwatch is definitely the standout mode. Then, of course, we alluded to it earlier, but there's a multiplayer, a competitive multiplayer component to this game, just like we have in the modern Sniper Elite titles as well. And this has always been obviously a much more niche experience than something like Call of Duty. Like there's not millions of people on the Sniper Elite servers every day like playing. This is a very select group of people who really enjoy sniping, who are out here in these sniper battles. And just from past experience in the other Sniper Elite games, these can be very intense battles and very taut and very sweaty palms, and there's a lot of tension looking for the muzzle flare for when people are trying to snipe you. The standout mode has always been the no cross mode, where everybody's just on their side of the map, and the only way to attack your enemies is via sniping them. You can't sneak up on them with those SMGs that we've been talking about so much. But from what you've played of the multiplayer here, what's your take on this? Is this just more of the same multiplayer that's in the current games?
Yeah, it's a little bit more bare bones in terms of like unlocks and rank up system. There's no ranking system in the multiplayer. Everything in this game is already unlocked from the start. That's part of the allure of it. It's everything that's ever come to the game, and it's all unlocked. So there's no like real progression system. There is some leaderboards, but yeah, this is like Sniper Elite 4 has a ranking system. There's perks you can unlock as you rank up. There's a lot more in depth progression system on Sniper Elite 4.
Now they also have as part of the remastered package, they have the downloadable content included in the game as well. Correct? So what does that entail? Is that just more like campaign missions? Is that all that was?
Yeah, those are under the challenge modes. There's 4 of them, and basically they're just like 4 self-contained missions. They're unrelated to the story, and it's just like a big area for you to go through and wipe out the enemies and complete the objective. It's pretty, like I said, everything in Sniper Elite V2 is a fraction compared to what kind of DLC we got with Sniper Elite 4. I mean, we saw the Sniper Elite 4 DLC packs. There were some large missions for you to do there, whereas in this one, it's just like one area, go through, eliminate everybody, complete your objective, and get out.
So, Brent, let's put a bow on this. So, let's wrap up, kind of summarize your overall thoughts on Sniper Elite V2 Remastered. What do you like? What don't you like? If you could, summarize this in one nice paragraph, like what would that look like?
For myself, having played Sniper Elite V2 and having played so much of Sniper Elite 3 and 4, that just my interest in Sniper Elite V2 brought me into this. I was like, I want to check this game out. I want to play this game. I love the enhanced frame rate. That's a very welcome change. But for the most part, for better or for worse, this is still very much the same game with just a nice shine to it. It looks good, it runs very smooth, but it's still Sniper Elite V2 without the evolve to Sniper Elite 3 and 4. And I think that's who they're aiming for with this. They're aiming for the hardcore fans of this series. If somebody were to come to me and say, hey, Brent, I'm interested in the Sniper Elite series, would you recommend V2? I'd be like, not yet. I would recommend 4 because that's the pinnacle of the series so far. That's the best one in the series. I want to recommend them to, go check that one out because it's probably close to the same price as V2 right now. So if you can go out and play Sniper Elite 4 and get the full experience, the best that the series has to offer, that's where I would recommend people to go to first. But for hardcore fans of the series who are like, man, I haven't played V2 since last gen, and it's out there now, I've already completed 3 and 4, hell, I might go back in there, and you'll get a lot of it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing my way through the campaign. It's very, very challenging. I'm familiar with how you're supposed to play these games. I'm familiar with how you're supposed to use stealth and mask your shots so you're not detected, so you can get through with the least amount of resistance. So for fans of the series, I would recommend this game. Yes, absolutely. Go back and check it out. If you're new to the series, I would recommend 4 and then work your way back to 3, and then if you really, really love the series, then maybe you'll like 2.
But that is going to wrap it up for this one. So no fancy score at the end of this one. Just it's a good title to check out if you're a fan of the series. If you were a fan of this game in the past, it's good to see it with a new coat of paint. So that is going to do it for us. Appreciate you guys watching the review. Definitely chime in the comments with your thoughts on the game. But that's going to do it for us. For Brent, I'm Ben. Thanks for watching this review. We'll see you guys next time.